Welcome to Recap Diary. Here is the recap of the movie Synchronic, released in 2019. In the opening scene of the movie, a young couple lies in bed, holding hands as they experiment with a new illegal drug called Synchronic. As they await the effects, the man briefly leaves the room, taking an elevator. Within moments, they both start experiencing hallucinations. The woman in bed witnesses plants and shrubs materialize in the room, and the walls vanish, revealing a tribal man. She suddenly finds herself in a dense jungle, where she encounters a snake, leading to her screaming in terror. Meanwhile, in the elevator, the man sees the walls disintegrate and a desert wasteland materialize before him. When the elevator floor vanishes, he plummets onto the sandy ground. In the suburbs, best friends Steve and Dennis work as emergency paramedics. They respond to a call about a drug overdose and arrive at a house where they find two individuals on the floor. A neighbor mentions hearing strange noises and someone speaking in French. Dennis tends to a wounded man who is still alive, discovering an exit wound on his back. Steve attends to the overdose victim, accidentally pricking himself with a syringe while administering medication, which revives the girl. The police arrive and discover a wrapper from Synchronic, concluding it's a result of addicts attacking each other. As they leave, Steve notices a copper coin on the floor and picks it up. While transporting the bleeding man to the ambulance, the police discover a bloody sword stuck to a wall. Later on, Steve and Dennis take a break, during which Steve plays golf. He examines the coin he found and notices the stamp date is 1721, which piques his curiosity. Concerned about the syringe prick, Steve undergoes an HIV test, and the doctor recommends a comprehensive medical examination. The following day, Steve attends Dennis's family picnic to celebrate his daughter Brianna's birthday. He approaches Brianna, hoping to connect with her as the cool uncle, but their conversation is interrupted by a phone call. That night at work, Dennis and Steve respond to an emergency involving a person who was burned to death. The officers are puzzled as they find no other signs of fire nearby, but discover an empty Synchronic wrapper and a melted doorknob out of place. Steve later gets a brain scan at the hospital and learns he has a cancerous tumor, which shakes him. Subsequently, Dennis and Steve respond to another call, involving the couple from the hotel. The woman has a snake bite on her knee and is in shock, muttering her boyfriend's name. They find another Synchronic packet at the scene, and the animal control worker mentions that they've searched for the snake without success. He recognizes the snake bite as one that hasn't been seen in the area for decades. Steve also finds a bag from the shop where the victim obtained Synchronic. At that moment, the hotel caretaker reports a loud noise from the elevator shaft. Dennis investigates and discovers the woman's boyfriend at the bottom of the shaft, dead, but with a contented expression. On their way to the hospital, Dennis notices Steve taking medicine more frequently. Steve consults with his doctor, who informs him that the tumor affects his pineal gland. The prognosis varies. Steve could have only 6 weeks or several decades, depending on his response to treatment. Steve contemplates sharing the news with Dennis, but decides against it. Dennis attempts to bond with Brianna by playing basketball with her, worried that he has grown somewhat distant as a father. Brianna reassures him that her concerns aren't severe. She simply struggles with figuring out her life's direction. In the evening, Dennis meets Steve at a bar and gives him a lamp for his birthday. During their conversation, Dennis opens up about doubts regarding his marriage, uncertain if being a family man aligns with his desires. He occasionally envies Steve's bachelor lifestyle. Dennis also confronts Steve about his increasing medication use, fearing addiction. However, Steve doesn't reveal his tumor diagnosis and insists he can take care of himself. The duo responds to a call about an overdose at a house party. They find two teenagers, one dead on the floor and the other speaking incoherently. The girl mentions that a girl named Brianna was with them. Terrified to hear his daughter's name, Dennis contacts his wife and learns that Brianna is missing. With a loved one falling victim to Synchronic, Steve decides to visit the shop that sells it and purchases all the remaining packets. A man observes Steve's actions and follows into his car, offering to buy the Synchronic at a higher price than the store's cost. Steve firmly declines and drives away. At Dennis's home, he and his wife are coordinating with authorities and printing flyers for Brianna. His wife is devastated, feeling they aren't doing enough. That night, Steve is in bed with his dog Hawking when he hears a noise from the living room. Armed with a bat, he investigates and discovers the shop owner in his closet. Steve threatens him, but the man admits to creating Synchronic accidentally. He is a chemist who converts legal medications into synthetic uppers resembling illegal substances. Synchronic was meant to be a recreational drug, but unexpectedly enables time travel by distorting spacetime, affecting the pineal gland. Adults appear as shadows or ghosts in the past, while younger individuals with underdeveloped pineal glands can fully travel through time and potentially become stuck. The shop owner has been tracking down Synchronic to eliminate it and made the shop his final stop. Skeptical, Steve claims to have flushed the Synchronic down the toilet and orders the man to leave. Believing all Synchronic is gone, the owner departs, unaware that Steve only discarded it in the trash. The next day, Steve undergoes chemotherapy, and afterward, he experiences severe side effects, including vomiting. He becomes increasingly fatigued while on duty. Dennis receives a call from the hospital, reporting a missing supply of morphine. He suspects Steve, unaware of his tumor diagnosis, noticing Steve's deteriorating health. They receive another call about a man with a broken leg, and upon arrival, they find the victim speaking in unfamiliar language. Dennis starts giving Steve instructions, which irritates Steve. He accuses Steve of coming to work under the influence of morphine. Their argument escalates into a physical altercation, necessitating intervention from the ambulance driver. Steve leaves and goes home alone. That night, Steve contemplates the copper coin, the sword, and the doorknob found at the houses they visited, realizing he might be able to transport objects through time as well. He takes another Synchronic and, as he starts to vanish, embraces Hawking. He successfully brings Hawking back with him, but they land in a period marked by severe racism. As they arrive at a house, a man chases them out, and everyone in the town regards them with hostility. 7 minutes pass, but Steve doesn't disappear. He returns to the house, takes another Synchronic, and sneaks inside. Unfortunately, the man discovers them and calls his friends, who wear notorious white robes. Chaos ensues in the living room, and Steve gets separated from Hawking. As Steve attempts to retrieve Hawking's leash, the men prepare to shoot him. Suddenly, he reappears in his living room without Hawking. Heartbroken, he hears Hawking whimpering and rushes to the window, witnessing Hawking slowly fading away. Steve realizes that if he's not in the same location after 7 minutes, he'll remain stuck in the past. He must also hold onto objects properly to bring them back. Regrettably, he doesn't have enough Synchronic left to retrieve Hawking. Steve decides to investigate the university dorms where Brianna disappeared. A teenager informs him that Brianna simply wandered off from a specific spot. She didn't vanish from there. Steve attempts to travel to that exact location and finds himself in a forest where men are conducting a ritual. They mistake him for a spirit they've summoned, swarm him, and he runs back to his original spot, clutching a lawn chair. He returns to the present without any issues and learns from the teen that Brianna left the message always at that spot. Later, Steve meets Dennis at a bar, where Dennis reveals he might be heading for a divorce. He feels guilty for not fulfilling his wedding date promise to his wife, explaining that she has always loved him unconditionally, but he believes he hasn't reciprocated that love. He credits Brianna with holding their marriage together, and her absence has exacerbated their existing issues. Surprisingly, Steve expresses a willingness to trade his bachelor lifestyle for Dennis's stable married life. This revelation shocks Dennis, and Steve finally discloses his brain tumor diagnosis, leaving Dennis deeply upset. Steve tries to reassure him by mentioning his ongoing chemotherapy, and they reconcile. Dennis admits that their ambulance driver has been stealing morphine. In a cemetery, Steve shows Dennis video footage of the effects of Synchronic and raises concerns about Brianna being trapped in the past. Dennis realizes that Brianna might have left a message for them to find in the present, leading Steve to recall the boulder at the park where he and Brianna had sat together. The duo rushes there and finds the word always. This spot must be where Brianna disappeared. With only 2 Synchronic doses left, Steve decides to travel back to find her. Steve lands in the midst of the American Civil War, with bombs and gunshots echoing around him. He seeks refuge in a bunker amid piles of dead soldiers, calling out for Brianna. Despite getting shot, Steve reaches Brianna, offering her his last Synchronic. They have 7 minutes to reach the boulder, or they'll be stuck in the past forever. As they run, a soldier calls Steve a slave, causing him to disappear as the time limit expires. Steve devises a plan to save Brianna. He baits a soldier into stepping on a mine, but the soldier sidesteps it, preparing to shoot. Unexpectedly, Brianna vanishes, and a massive explosion occurs. Steve rises and sits on the boulder as Brianna reappears in the present and reunites with her father. They witness Steve's ghostly image on the boulder before he fades away, forever trapped in the past. And that's the end of this recap. Make sure to subscribe, share, and comment. Remember, your engagement and support keep us motivated. See you at the next one.